Right, that's right. Yeah, Calgary, we're doing pretty good. Startup alive, startup dead, startup zombie. I've only touched the surface. I really help clients. That's what I like to do. We'll make a Honda Civic version of your banking. I said, oh, tech. I was one of 600 graduates with the same degree in Calgary. We're a smaller city, we're a smaller ecosystem. There are advantages here.
Stephanie, thank you so much for joining. Really excited to have you on the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Really look forward to hearing your story and to know more about how you help startups. Let's start with your background.
Okay.
What did you do before, and how did you transition into what's known now one of the biggest and fast growing ecosystem in Canada?
Right, that's right. Yeah, Calgary, we're doing pretty good. So yes, my background is started with a business degree at Mount Royal University. I'm born and raised Calgarian. With that, I kind of knew I wanted to study business from a very young age. I just was selling in the home living room different pipe cleaner creations and trying to do senior discounts and different sales and trying to do different signs to get customers in my door. So business was always on my mind. And then, yes, with finishing university, I was one of 600 graduates with the same degree in Calgary graduating. And so that to me, I had to figure out, okay, well, why me? What was my, what can I contribute? Why was business important to me? And so with that introspection time, I figured that to me, I went down a lot of rabbit holes about what makes businesses succeed, which ones don't. And there was a local news article at the time that I read about that said, that spoke about a small business owner that was earning minimum wage versus other business owners that, you see on TV, etc., that are wildly successful, they're growing and expanding, and they're going to new countries with their product and service, etc. So to me, it was figuring out how is it that some businesses make it to that level and some continue to struggle and maybe maintain that sort of lifestyle business, as we hear in our ecosystem. So yes, went down that rabbit hole, and then that's where kind of banking found me, that I got to have a lot of exposure to a lot of different kinds of companies at one time and talk to a lot of different business owners. So started there in the small business space, was helping lenders at the time doing administrative accounting tasks, and then became my own relationship manager, specialized in arts and culture. And so I also past life taught piano, and that was my kind of extracurricular pursuit. So I taught piano for a period of time, and so I had an idea about how to run a small business and operate that. So that got me to exposure to more kinds of companies, and then I wanted to do more advisory work. So there was an opportunity to cover a mat leave at RBCx, it's called. So it's a small business accelerator program, and that exposed me to doing more advisory work and coaching, connecting these small business owners with different areas of expertise like sales and marketing, cash flow, and so on. So enjoyed that, and then wanted to do a little bit more. I kind of saw Platform Calgary at the time was up and growing, and so I said, oh, tech. I wonder what this is all about. And was fortunate to then go over and run an ag tech and food tech accelerator program for a period of time. And so then that got me meeting so many incredible people in the Calgary ecosystem of different service organizations and different government partners, whether it's provincial or federal, and people like you with Innovate Calgary and more. So really like the space that everyone really wants to kind of wrap their hands around a founder and a startup to support them and help companies grow here. And then RBCx found me. So it kind of combined both worlds. I really wanted to work with strong founders and startups, and then too, I had the banking background, so I kind of knew about compliance, I knew about regulatory needs, I knew about flow of funds and credit. So yeah, it was kind of combining of both worlds, and it's been almost 2 years now.
I'm pretty sure that everyone knows what RBC is, but I'm not sure that many people know what RBCx means.
Right.
Can you please elaborate a little bit more on that?
Sure.
What does it do for startups, founders? How does it help, and what kind of service it provides?
Yeah, definitely. So X does not stand for anything, but I like to think it's kind of like exponential support for startups and founders. So we aim to connect and strengthen Canada's tech ecosystem across Canada. So there's representatives, excuse me, like me across Canada, and particularly within the banking part, that's where I'm part of. We aim to be the best bank for like high growth tech startups that are using VC capital, venture capital as part of their growth trajectory. So other parts of RBC and other banks, they're cash flow lenders. So they'll provide credit and debt based on how well the company can manage its cash flow, and is there kind of room in the company's cash to cover a loan payment. Within RBCx, we're the only part of the bank that lends to cash burning companies. And as opposed to lending on those typical standard cash debt servicing metrics that other parts of the bank use, we adjudicate based on the strength of the VCs backing that startup. So we'll have conversations like a due diligence sort of call with these VCs and institutional investors to understand why that they invested in this startup. The size of their fund, what's the follow-on capital look like, and so on. So that's how we adjudicate our loans.
Any specific industries that you prioritize?
We're across industries, across different phases. So we start at the early stages, pre-seed, seed stage, up to Series A and beyond. We are senior debt lenders, so most of our lending starts at the Series A plus mark. So like venture debt, we have a SaaS line of credit. We also do shred lending as well. But at the earlier stages, we also have an unsecured card too. That is one way that we help support early stage entrepreneurs and founders without those personal guarantees that you usually see out in the market.
Interesting. So we know that banks usually are quite conservative. So how does RBCx balance the large bank and stability of the large bank with the fast evolving, fast growing needs of the startups?
There's an expectation that we service clients as fast and as easily as the Apples and other major tech companies. When you get your new iPhone, for example, and just the setup process says get started and has all the different languages on it, and you have that easy, simple kind of process, that's the same expectation that our clients have of us. So that's why within RBCx, we're part of the bigger RBC group called commercial banking. So we deliver the same level of kind of high touch service as our commercial banking clients. So you get the relationship manager, you get the associate, foreign exchange, treasury, cash management, all these other specialists, versus needing to call in to a 1-800 number, for example, or going into a branch and so on. So that's one thing that kind of differentiates us, and we know that with our startups too, that they're rapidly evolving and adapting, pivoting their business model, and just these changes that are happening quite quickly, as opposed to kind of other businesses and industries. So this is why we have checkpoints with our clients regularly. We have a smaller portfolio size in comparison to other parts of the bank, so that we can have these touch points and say, okay, you've made, for example, you've secured a major LOI or a major corporate contract. That's going to change your flow of funds. You gotta pay vendors differently. There might be caps going on. So then we help to change that very quickly, so that it supports not only at the foundational level of infrastructure with banking, but as the company grows, we adapt. And I like to say at the early stage, that's my kind of area of expertise, is pre-seed, seed stage. It's like we help to just make we'll make a Honda Civic version of your banking, so that it is most fee efficient and works for now. And then And then as the company grows and scales, whether that's with revenues, it's hitting profitability, or it's had a recent fundraise, then we'll upgrade these different parts of our services to work for the startup better as it grows and scales. Because as companies get to that level, there'll be advisors and board members that are going to be asking for new reporting capabilities and going to be asking for more things. So that's where the bank comes into.
Let's talk a little bit about your role at RBCx. So what exactly do you do? How do you help startups? And what are the common challenges that usually they have when they come to you?
Okay, 3 questions at once. Okay, so I day to day, I am a relationship manager, so I really help clients. That's what I like to do, and I get to be curious about what's going on in the business and changes and any hurdles that are going on. For example, talking earlier today, talked with a kind of oil and gas startup software company and sorting out how are they going to build their marketplace. So, and those flow of funds. So we have those kind of conversations. I like to think that being RBC is one of the biggest banks in Canada. There's a lot of different teams, a lot of different areas of expertise, a lot of beyond banking services. RBC can help with your payroll. We can help with your accounts payable. We can help with RRSP contributions for your team members. So with that, this is what we have conversations about. So as the company grows and we see that there's more hires going on, then we can help with that, and you get promotions that way as being an RBC client. Definitely capital. What are my resources that are available to me as an early stage founder, and kind of needing that capital right away. Maybe these are technical founders that have already built out the software and so on, but maybe you need some for sales or marketing, or maybe their first hire. So yes, we have conversations about how do we get that started, and so there's a conversation about banking and usual debt like credit cards, lines of credits, etc. And then on the other side, it's about the ecosystem resources and the non-dilutive funding sources that are out there. So I refer to a few. So there's I always see if a local entrepreneur in Calgary or startup founder is connected to Alberta Innovates, see about their grants. And there's also Start Alberta is my go-to. I share about. Grant Match is another granting database platform. RBC has a partnership with them, but everyone has access to it. So you can put in some of your company's details, and you can put in some of your company's details, and it will suggest different grants based on your industry and your geography. So that's a good one. And then I've also seen too, I think it's based out of Vancouver, it's called Pocketed. That's a little bit more tech focused. And so that's another one that I kind of recommend clients to check out for non-dilutive funding sources. In early stage too, we have within RBCx, if they are looking for the early VC funding, maybe they've had some angels or high net worth individuals, or maybe just a couple of early stage VC funds investing in them, like the Graphite Ventures like we've seen, or if it's Metiquity based in Calgary, etc. RBCx also has a fundraising list. So we send this to all of the VC funds that RBCx is an LP in, plus another 120 plus other early stage VC funds in Canada and the US. So this goes out quarterly, and it helps to expose our startups to investors that they might not have come across at events and so on.
Perfect. Thank you for bringing up those names. I actually didn't know some of them. I will be checking out. So thank you for sharing.
Intros. Yeah.
Awesome. So you already mentioned before in the conversation, and also it's on a LinkedIn profile, saying that you're trying to understand why some companies can make it and some companies are surviving. So where have you gone? How far you've gone in the journey of discovering?
I've only touched the surface. I think what I've come to understand now is it really depends on the founder and the circumstance and the kind of economic conditions as well. So there's not, every founder has a different story of how their startup started. And whether it's solving their own need based on their own industry, if they've had that had that expertise, or even last week I was talking with a founder that was a teacher and then kind of saw this problem at the school that's in a completely different field, but now he's developing this new product. So yes, inspiration can come from anywhere, and so I think of that, and then it's also based on, for me, I also find it's about the founder and how they grow the business. That if they choose as their kind of model of possibility or their future, do they think about exiting? Do they think about selling? Because it's like beginning with the end in mind. Again, some founders don't necessarily do that. They just know, hey, I really like delivering this particular service, and they'll make the company up. Versus others that kind of have that end goal in mind, knowing that if they're going to bring in investors, they already know and have that expectation of what they want to see in terms of traction and milestones and sales growth, etc. So I find there's a little bit of that, and cash flow. I think cash flow is kind of king. If the founding team understands, what's the flow of funds coming in and out, where are those possible gaps, and does the margin really fit the industry, and does it fit the industry, and does it support growth of the company, then I think that's what helps to make some businesses succeed, while others become stagnant. Have you heard of like Startup Alive, Startup Dead, Startup Zombie before?
Yeah.
So that's like something I think about too, is that company alive, meaning that its revenue is growing, there's very little churn, the customer acquisition cost is low, the customer lifetime value is substantial, then that's a great company that investors are going to be interested in. Otherwise, if it's dead, it means that maybe there's slow to no revenue growth. There may be a churn issue going on. The founders and the team might not understand that customer acquisition cost and versus kind of what they're getting for that customer and how much they're truly getting from that lifetime value of that customer. So thinking about that, and then the startup zombies are those that have had some equity injected into the company. It's operating, but not necessarily at the same valuation as before. So it's kind of in a tricky scenario there too. Does it pivot? Does it not? So it can really depend on who the advisors are. Where do they see this company growing into? How tenacious are they to make changes into the company?
Are there many zombies that you're working with?
I can't really share that. Certainly, I do see startups that have said that they're raising for multiple years now, and so to me, that's an indication that it may not be on that same high growth trajectory. Nothing wrong with that. Like, I don't believe that VC funds and attaining VC money is the North Star for every company. I don't believe that companies need to attain that, and they're failures if they aren't. There's some still very successful companies that are earning $1 million in revenue or $700K in revenue or multi-millions. There's still nothing, there's still very successful companies out there. And isn't it nice that even though you don't get that like top 1% of the 1% of capital, you can still run a successful company? It just means that you might be operating a bit differently. You may be utilizing debt, or you might have slower growth, but you can call it more sustained. You don't have the VCs or other investors kind of looking at your company and checking it all the time. So there's a give and take, and I think some founders know that based on my company and based on like the total attainable market, that we do need these VC funds right away so that we can penetrate the market, capture market share, and so on. Whereas others, they don't necessarily need to do that. It depends on the founder, depends on where they want to go, and both can exist in the world.
Great. And the last question I want to hear your perspective on. So we know that Canada invests a lot in innovation, definitely, right? So we can see a lot of support coming in from the government as well. We have incubators, accelerators, we have different programs, which is amazing. It's a must for the early stage startups, right?
Yeah.
But if you look at the numbers, still the results not necessarily matching the input, right? So what do you think, why it's situation happening like that? Why it's not booming? What are the biggest bottlenecks?
Yeah, I think we're just speaking to a young market in comparison to others. Like I think Canada and the world really compares itself to Silicon Valley a lot. And yes, I think that is a great model possibility of how our ecosystem can be built out. But it depends on the people here. It depends on the generations that have grown up here, what their work ethic is, and how it's a bit different. And so I do think it's a bit about nature and nurture with it. Two other thoughts I had was this is, as opposed to comparing ourselves to a bigger wave, think of our Canadian ecosystem as a smaller wave, but there's advantages to that. There's a smaller pool, you have more access to resources and so on, versus the US startups that don't necessarily have non-dilutive funding options like what's in Canada. So I think there's advantages to it, and knowing like how to ride this wave of the Canadian tech ecosystem. And before, when we had our conversation before this podcast episode, we talked about different international markets, right? And how their tech ecosystem is different than Canada too. So I love that there's trade commission trips, and I think of Alberta Innovates, I think bringing 30 or 40 different startups to South by Southwest last year. I think that's incredible exposure for those best Alberta startups to see how other startups operate and go and kind of get those ideas in their head of how I can be doing this differently and expanding their market share, etc. And then sharing that with the ecosystem. So there's that. And also being a young ecosystem, there isn't necessarily a generational velocity happening between the founders and the tech team that have raised successfully, have exited, and then are coming back to starting a new startup or advising. We have seen that. I don't know if we have seen it enough to reach that critical mass just yet. So I certainly think it's coming. I definitely believe it's a long game. I do think, yes, across Canada, but I'm just biased, I guess. I see it more so in Alberta living here, but there's a lot of PR about how well our ecosystem is doing, and so I think having that market reach and having that kind of mainstream news to say this is an up and growing sector here, I think kind of taps the shoulder of a lot of great talent to come here and new technology to say, I should check out what's going on here, what resources. So I've seen startups that have moved from Halifax, from Toronto, to tap into, even though we're a smaller city, we're a smaller ecosystem, there are advantages here. And I think that's where, to me, I think, it's a long game, and I'm excited to see how our ecosystem changes across Canada and are supportive of each other. I've heard, probably you have experience with this too, is I've heard, within Calgary, we're really supportive of fellow founders and willing to share of the different grants and etc. that have been used versus other places that are a bit more tight-lipped about what they're using, or they kind of steal ideas or something like that. I really like that about our ecosystem, so I hope that continues.
Definitely exciting times ahead, and Calgary is going to be one of those places that definitely people will know more soon. Yeah. Well, Stefan, thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for the great work that you do supporting startups. It's really important, and I work with startups as well, and I understand how hard is it. But when we see the results, it keeps us moving. Totally, absolutely. Yeah, there's some great success stories out there. Between us, let's keep growing. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.